Most people who start looking for a place to retire overseas usually end up researching the same handful of countries. Portugal dominates the conversation. Spain is always near the top of the list. Italy has its loyal followers. And Greece is often presented as Europe's affordable alternative. Those are the familiar names, the countries that appear in retirement magazines, relocation websites, travel channels, and almost every list of the world's best places to start over. But hidden along the Mediterranean, directly across the sea from Italy, sits a country that most people barely think about: Albania. And that's what makes its story so fascinating. Because when you look at Albania on paper, it seems like the kind of place that should be attracting foreign retirees, entrepreneurs, remote workers, and investors by the hundreds of thousands. It has beautiful Mediterranean beaches, a warm climate, historic towns, dramatic mountain scenery, a growing tourism industry, and some of the lowest living costs you'll find anywhere in Europe. By almost every measure, Albania should be one of the hottest relocation destinations on the continent. But it isn't. Even today, despite receiving more international attention than ever before, Albania remains one of Europe's most overlooked countries. So why? Why does a country with so much going for it remain largely ignored? And why are the people who actually discover Albania often convinced they've found one of Europe's last hidden opportunities? To answer that question, you first have to understand something important. Albania's biggest obstacle today isn't geography, it isn't climate, and it certainly isn't affordability. It's history. For much of the 20th century, Albania became one of the most isolated countries on Earth. While Western Europe grew wealthier, more connected, and increasingly globalized, Albania moved in the opposite direction. The country effectively sealed itself off from the outside world. Foreign visitors rarely entered. Foreign investment was almost non-existent. Information moved slowly, and over time, Albania simply disappeared from the world's attention. Perhaps nothing illustrates that period better than what happened next. The government became so concerned about the possibility of invasion that it ordered the construction of approximately 170,000 concrete bunkers across the country. Think about that for a moment. At the time, Albania had fewer than 3 million people, yet it built roughly 170,000 bunkers. That's approximately one bunker for every 17 residents. Even today, those bunkers remain scattered across beaches, mountains, forests, villages, and farmland. It's one of the strangest landscapes you'll find anywhere in Europe. But here's where the story gets interesting. The country changed. Its reputation didn't. For decades, the outside world stopped paying attention. And when people stop paying attention to a country long enough, their assumptions freeze in time. Many people still imagine Albania as poor, unstable, isolated, and undeveloped. Then they visit and discover something completely different. They find modern cafes packed with young professionals, new highways connecting major cities, fast internet, luxury apartment developments, busy waterfront districts, international tourists, and a country transforming much faster than many outsiders realize. In fact, one of the biggest surprises is the coastline, because Albania's coastline creates one of the strangest value comparisons in Europe. Stand on the Albanian Riviera and look west across the water. Beyond the horizon sits Italy, home to some of the most expensive coastal real estate on the continent. Now look around. You're looking at the same Mediterranean Sea. You're enjoying a very similar climate. And you're standing in front of scenery that many travelers would happily compare to destinations costing 2 or 3 times as much. Yet the prices are often dramatically lower. That's why places like Saranda, Himarë, and Ksamil have become increasingly popular with travelers. People arrive expecting a budget destination and leave wondering why the rest of Europe hasn't discovered it yet. But that naturally leads to another mystery. If Albania is so attractive, why isn't everybody moving there? Part of the answer is timing. Spain spent generations building its reputation. Portugal spent decades attracting retirees and foreign investors. Croatia became one of Europe's great tourism success stories. Albania arrived late, very late. And because it arrived late, much of the world simply hasn't updated its mental map. People are still looking where everyone else is looking. There is another reason Albania's population story is so unusual, and this is the part that surprises many people. While foreigners are only now beginning to discover Albania, millions of Albanians spent decades leaving it. After the fall of communism in the early 1990s, large numbers of Albanians moved abroad in search of better economic opportunities. Many left for Italy. Others moved to Greece, Germany, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Today, Albania has one of the largest diasporas relative to its population anywhere in Europe. Millions of people with Albanian roots live outside the country. For decades, Albania experienced something unusual. The world wasn't moving into Albania. Albanians were moving out. And that's one reason the country remains overlooked today. Many of the conversations about Albania were shaped by people who left during difficult times. The reality on the ground has changed dramatically since then, but perceptions often take much longer to catch up. And that's exactly why retirees are beginning to pay attention, because retirees don't care about popularity. They care about value. And that's where Albania starts becoming extremely interesting. Let's compare realities. In many American cities today, retirees can easily spend between $3,000 and $5,000 per month, maintaining what most people would consider a basic lifestyle. Housing costs more, healthcare costs more, groceries cost more, transportation costs more, utilities cost more. Everything seems to become more expensive every year. Now compare that with Albania. Many foreign residents report monthly living costs between $1,200 and $2,000 depending on location and lifestyle. A comfortable apartment can often be rented for somewhere between $350 and $700 per month. Restaurant meals frequently cost less than a fast food lunch in the United States. Fresh produce remains affordable. Utilities are generally manageable, and a cup of coffee often costs less than a bottle of water at an American airport. That's where the math becomes difficult to ignore. The average retired American couple may receive somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 per month through Social Security, pensions, or retirement income. In many parts of America, that budget feels increasingly tight. In Albania, however, that same income can often cover housing, food, healthcare, transportation, entertainment, and still leave money available for travel or savings. For people living on fixed incomes, that difference isn't small. It's life-changing. But there is another reason some foreigners are becoming interested in Albania, and it has nothing to do with retirement. It's land. Most people assume affordable land in Europe disappeared years ago. Then they discover Albania. Outside major tourist zones, agricultural land remains surprisingly affordable compared to much of Western Europe. And that's important because Albania isn't just a tourism destination. Agriculture remains one of the foundations of the country's economy. The country produces olive oil, wine, honey, citrus fruits, medicinal herbs, mountain tea, vegetables, and a growing range of specialty agricultural products sold throughout Europe. In fact, Albania has quietly become one of Europe's important producers of medicinal and aromatic plants. Large quantities of oregano, sage, rosemary, lavender, and other herbs sold across Europe originate from Albanian farms and mountain regions. For entrepreneurs, that creates opportunities many people never expect to find in Europe. Not necessarily massive commercial farming operations, but vineyards, olive groves, guest farms, agritourism businesses, export operations, or simply owning productive land at prices that would be impossible in many parts of Western Europe. That's why Albania attracts a different type of newcomer. Not just retirees, but entrepreneurs, remote workers, investors, and people looking for a second act in life. Because while much of Europe has become increasingly expensive, Albania still feels like a place where ordinary people can afford assets. Not just rent them, own them.